How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. You can find me, as always, on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Dalton_Trigg. You can find my guy, Grant Afseth, who does a lot of great work for us at DallasBasketball.com. He's our official Mavs Step Back correspondent for this season. You can find him at Grant Afseth. Grant, before we get started, I think we have to start out by congratulating the Texas Rangers for a great ALCS, and they're headed to the World Series. And I'm not a big baseball fan, but I know a ton of Texas Rangers fans that have followed me throughout the year that seem to have been tortured by the team's play at times. So I feel so good for them. It's they've made it through the dog days, and now their team is in the World Series. So congratulations to the Rangers. That was a really fun series against the Houston Astros, and I'm glad they came out on top. It was very similar to how that Mavs Sun series went, going down 3-2 and then blowing them out the next two games. That was very cool to see how that played out. So anyway, there's your baseball portion of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. But Grant, how you doing, man? How you doing for this NBA season eve? Well, I guess the NBA actually starts today, but the Mavs get underway tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm really excited for it. I think there's going to be a lot of intriguing things to follow about the team, like this team in particular. It seems like a lot of people don't really know what to expect. You look at a lot of national expectations, and some people have them all the way down at like 12. Some people have them as high as like outside of the play-in, like 1 through 6. So I think like this is going to be a very interesting thing to see how that kind of develops, all the little storylines that go along with it, and there's not very many more exciting ways to start than against the hot name that everyone's kind of focused on right now with Victor Wembanyama in the Spurs.
Oh yeah, he's been, the hype around Wembanyama has been pretty high for over a year now, but it's really cranked up these last few weeks, with some of the stuff he's shown us in preseason play. So it's going to be all eyes on Luka versus Wembanyama, and then you got Kyrie Irving and all these other key pieces the Mavs have added over the summer. Who's going to start at the 3 for the Mavs? So there's a lot of stuff to watch for. And speaking of that starting 3 spot, one of the candidates just got a big extension, Josh Green. Right before the deadline, we weren't sure if it was going to happen. If it didn't happen, he was going to end up going into restricted free agency next summer. But they got a deal done, 3 years, $41 million. I got some pushback when I put that it was a steal for the Mavs when I posted that article yesterday, but I can see where they're coming from with that, because a steal would mean it favors the Mavs more than anything else. I think this is a good deal for both sides now that I look at it, because it averages out to about $13 million a year for Green, which is about mid-level exception money. And the trajectory of his career so far and how he's improved every single season, that seems to be fair value for him. And it still, even with it being fair value for him, it's good value for the Mavs as well, because worst case scenario, if he doesn't keep improving, you have a movable contract, a good player on a movable contract that you can include in trades down the line. And best case scenario, he keeps improving the way he has been. He's still only 22, even though he's about to turn 23. And you have a really good player on a contract where he's making $13 million a year. So on the surface, it looks like that both sides got a really good deal out of this one. But what are your thoughts on the Josh Green extension?
Yeah, I think it's quite team friendly. There's no options, it doesn't sound like, involved based off of like the reporting that's already been put out. 3 years, $41 million. I think you look at a lot of the players that make a similar amount of money, they don't really have the same upside. Like I think the baseline of what you would get from Josh Green is very comparable to a lot of those players, and they don't really have, like that athleticism or that upside for a good amount of those players. So I think there's a lot to like about that. I think another factor, if he emerges as a regular or full-time starter, then I do think that you would be very accurate in your original thought with it being a steal, because there's not really many full-time starters that are like on the climb of their career or the ascension of their career. trajectory that aren't like towards 30 that make around that amount of money. Just looking around at like different contracts and salary levels for like next season. And when you look at the rising salary cap as well, I think that would be a very, very good value. I think there's a lot to like about his like continued year to year growth. I think he's someone who takes like his off seasons and his game by game very serious. He went from basically being left wide open and missing catch and shoot jump shots against the Jazz in the Western Conference Finals run in 2022 to coming back to shooting over 40% from three on a solid volume and increased volume, I should say, as well. So I think, it'll be interesting to see how they utilize him this season with, he's shown potential, like as a pick and roll ball handler. He's been able to, attack the paint, make plays. He's got some intriguing attributes overall that like you don't really see from role players, like with his improved shooting, that kind of opens up his ability to explode past closeouts. And then he's almost like got a rugby like passing ability, like deep on drives, like that secondary playmaking. So like a lot of those things, if he can continue to cut down on fouls as a like the point of attack defender or the guy who takes the top responsibility, I think that would also be another further way to like maximize his value. And if all those factors go into the right direction for his development in the Mavs, I think that would definitely be a steal of a contract. So it'll be interesting to see how he puts it all together this season and look back at it.
Well, and I mean, it's not just his own personal growth, but like you wrote about the other day, it's like how the team is using him. You wrote about how they're using more dribble handoffs with him this season. You want to expand on that a little bit? And to those who haven't read it, you should go to DallasBasketball.com and read Grant's latest article on Josh Green. But Grant, just give the people a little insight on your thoughts there.
Yeah, for sure. I think with so far in preseason, something I noticed like very early on, I think like day 2 of training camp, the Mavs are working a lot on dribble handoffs and a lot of variations out of that to have counters and layers to it. And I actually asked Jason Kidd about it at the time, and he said we aren't going to do any of that. You know what? During the season, I'm just playing with you. And then said he likes a lot about the personnel that the team has in those situations. So I thought that was interesting to kind of see them, actually do that, during preseason and continue to do so.
Jason Kidd giving us prime meme material for the season with that clip. So shout out to him.
For sure. And just seeing, if you think about Josh Green overall, the key for him is just to continue to make defenses pay for going under a lot of coverages, whether it's pick and roll, whether it's handoffs, or even off-ball screening actions, because he is so explosive getting to the rim. It's very hard to find players that are as with momentum going to the rim, turning the corner, that are as explosive as him and can play above, I guess you could say above the rim or on the way down on the finishes as well. So the more he can continue to, I guess, make defenses pay with just quick trigger threes, as they call it, like on the catch, he just flows into his shot, kind of a motion shot. If he can continue to knock those down as he showed against the Pistons, that goes a long way in opening up different options for him. And also another thing for him that he mentioned, when I asked him about dribble handoffs and his potential in that area after the Pistons game, and also, like Jason Kidd at practice recently, they both talked about how he needs to continue to be aggressive, taking pull-ups. Like if he's attacking downhill, like against the Pistons, there's a play out of the corner where, Derek Lively got into a quick dribble handoff with him and Jaden Ivey went under. And, right around the elbow, Josh just pulled up and knocked down the shot. And that's a great way to make the defense pay as well. So if he can continue to show that he can make plays in that way and provide counters and punish the defense for trying to get away with going under, I think that'll open up just a lot of options for him. But even in general, just like pick and roll, like ball handling sequences, he was extremely efficient in them last season. It wasn't a great sample size, so it's hard to say, oh my gosh, he's going to be this elite option if you just keep spamming this action for him. But there's a lot to like about whether you have Luka or Kyrie as a screener. They're not going to want to switch as a defense, very likely against that. So that opens up just downhill attacks. And even when Luka and Kyrie were out, last season, there was games where they started to play the ball or play the offense more through him, with him initiating the offense. and they would do things like double drag screens and like Spain pick and roll, even at like very, very briefly. But he showed a lot of potential attacking out of that. So I think just continuing to grow as an off the dribble shooter, which he worked on in the offseason, and late shot clock, attacking when plays break down. If he can show growth in that, I think all of that comes together to be very intriguing. And this will be a pivotal season to kind of showcase that growth.
Well, and another thing is I feel like Josh Green is best utilized when the Mavs are playing with more pace. We saw it last season, and specifically, and it's not an indictment on Luka. It's just a play style thing. When Luka and Kyrie were playing, Josh Green seemed to kind of get lost in the shuffle a little bit because it was just back and forth with Luka. They really weren't playing with much pace. It was just your turn, my turn kind of thing. And, then when Luka was out, Luka and Kyrie or one or the other, Josh Green had some really big games. The biggest of them all was right after the Kyrie trade when Luka nor Kyrie were playing against the Utah Jazz, and him and Jaden Hardy went for 29 apiece in a big road win for the Mavs. So that's one of the biggest things. They got to up the pace. I think Luka just said recently that he's open to playing with more pace. He's open for that. And if he is going to get that last starting spot for the Mavs, he made a good impression during that last preseason game when he got the start. 24 minutes, had a team high 22 points, was a plus 18 in 24 minutes, shot 8 for 12 from the field, 4 for 5 from 3. So, and also had 3 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals, and a block. So he did a little bit of everything in a short period of time as a starter in that last game. So that's the biggest thing. I think they got to play with more pace. Luka claims that he is open to doing that. We'll see if it actually translates onto the court because, once they start playing, Luka has a tendency to kind of get back into his ISO heavy stuff, which, he's one of the best. He is the best ISO player in the league, arguably. So you can't really blame him there. But for the team's sake, I think they do have to change up how they play a little bit.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it as well is like if you think back to the opening night roster last year, there's a big difference in athleticism and just skill level, like offensively speaking. It's a little different to throw like spray ahead or throw ahead passes to like even just like Seth Curry in transition, who can make plays off the catch. And also like a variety of other players as well. Like Grant Williams is more capable as an off the dribble player, I should say, than like Reggie Bullock or Dorian Finney-Smith. And like he even showed it in that last game. He had like a attack and semi-transition where he just got into a little step back at the elbow playing through contact that like you don't really see too much of that from like Dorian or Reggie Bullock. Like I remember tracking stats last year and they were like among the absolute lowest in the league in terms of like off the dribble, scoring for players with high volume of minutes and like drives even. Like it just makes it a lot easier on a player who
that stayed
those options.
That stayed true for Bullock during preseason for the Rockets. By the way, I've kept up with how with how he's been doing over there.
It's just
great
so
guy,
limiting. Yeah, it's
great
so
guy,
limiting.
great veteran and everything. But man, those stat lines where he plays 15 plus minutes and doesn't have anything in the stat box, it's kind of deflating.
Yeah, like if you look at like in general, like year to year, he's definitely like one of the worst finishers in general. And it's very hard to trust like making like just getting a rebound or an outlet pass, and then you're just throwing a throw ahead to someone like that who, you better just like get into the offense and slow it down instead of doing that. Like there's just more capable options on this, this roster as well. And I think a big part of it too is they trust the ability to pass for Derek Lively, like you saw in some of the Pistons, possessions possessions against the Pistons where he got into quick dribble handoffs, like read and react stuff. I think, having, front court players where you can trust, that goes a lot into getting into actions quicker. So I think, just continuing to see, his growth could be an important factor in how they play that way. Because even like, some of the front court players like Dwight Powell, Maxi Kleba, you don't really expect them to do much like put the ball on the floor and make a positive play, attack a closeout, things like that. And when you have a unit with a lot of one-dimensional players who are like good shooters or good like play finishers in general, it's very hard to just like push the pace. And I think a big part of the pace pushing against the Pistons, if you really go back and look, there was a lot of just transition breakdowns. Like there was a time where Cade Cunningham and Isaiah Stewart literally just were like lackadaisical, didn't pay attention. And Kyrie just right after crossing half court just darts the ball to Derek Lively along the baseline and to get into a dribble handoff immediately. Like things like that, like for a rookie to know to get into a dribble handoff, like just react like, oh, I'm being unaccounted for. And Josh Green's drifting to the corner. I'm going to get into the dribble handoff. Like that's pretty big and helpful. Like you just don't really like,
very smart.
You're not going to play the Pistons all the time. So it's like, there's going to be less opportunities for things like that. Where it's just like, oh, I'm going to punish the defense for not paying attention. Like, but in general, I think there's a far more capable roster for playing faster. And especially like someone we haven't even mentioned, like Derek Jones. Like he had so many transition opportunities against like lesser athleticism teams like Real Madrid. Like he got out in transition so much. Like they lost the game, but like I think he had like probably 8 points just from like getting out in transition. So having, options like that definitely helps and adds up throughout the course of a game. And I mean, honestly, one last thing I forgot to mention, even like recently with Slovenia during some of those prep games, like Luka had like a whole game where he was just completely throwing like throw ahead passes. Like he had like 3 or 4 plus assists off of those passes. So he's a willing passer, almost like Kevin Love with those throw ahead passes. It's just important to have athletes and capable offensive talents. But it'll be interesting to see how against better teams, how they're able to find that balance between, controlling the pace by getting into their half court offense versus just continuing to push.
Yeah. And I mean, you said it. You have to have the personnel for them to be able to play that way. And I feel like they, it may not be perfect, but I do think they have gotten a lot better across the board as far as adding better athletes and guys with, in my opinion, higher basketball IQ. That's not a knock on the other guys. It's just the fact that some guys get it more than others do. And that's the biggest thing about Lively. We've talked about it since Summer League. His basketball IQ seems to be off the charts. And, obviously for a rookie NBA big man, it's going to take time for him, for his body to physically mature, for him to stay in an NBA weight room and, get to a point where like a Rudy Gobert is that he had to go up against twice in preseason. But, he's definitely on the right path, and he's shown he's smart. He's a hard worker. Tyson Chandler called him a sponge because he literally, he takes information, processes it, and doesn't make the same mistake twice, if he can help it. So that's really huge for him, and it's huge for the Mavs. They haven't had a big man like that since Tyson Chandler. I know it's like become a cliche at this point to say that, but I mean, it's the truth. They really haven't had a player at the center position like Lively since Tyson Chandler. So it's great to see him progressing the way he has at just 19 years old. And I think the sky's the limit for him, playing with Luka, especially if he can work in, a little bit of shooting over the course of the year. It might not be a lot this year, but, just throughout the course of his first few years of his career, if he can add that element to his game too, it's going to add a ton of versatility for the Mavs offensively. And then defensively, he seems to have the instincts to, give them a boost on that end too. It's not going to be something like if somebody on the perimeter gets beat, it's not just like, oh, well, we're screwed. They actually do have some help defense that can make a difference now. So I'm excited for that. Grant, one quick thing here before we take off. We got the season opening match for the Mavs against the Spurs on the road tomorrow night. It's Luka, it's Wemby, it's Kyrie, it's all these other new Mavs getting their first game under their belt. So I mean, what should we expect from this matchup? Because obviously all the hype is on Wembanyama right now. But I talked with Grant Williams last week, and he was very conscious of, this isn't just Wemby. Like this team has some pretty good young pieces that they need to be paying attention to as well. So, I mean, what should we expect from this season opening game against the Spurs?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very good test. I think, the Spurs have been playing, Jeremy Sohan at the 1 more often, and that's just a lot of size. Like they have jumbo lineups where it's like tall wings are their smallest players, and they're all athletes. And then, you have Zach Collins, who's a pretty solid shot blocker. And then Wembanyama, who can block threes on the perimeter that you just wouldn't expect a player to be able to recover to. So I think it'll be a very good test to kind of see how capable some of those, complementary players they added. Like, Grant Williams has worked on his game. Someone you talked to him. He's worked on his like off the dribble, like things like that, like creation, and seeing how capable he is in that sort of larger role, taking on like matchups where they're capable of containing him at the point of attack and have help defenders. I think will be important to see the potential of the team. It's not going to be something that's going to be a very frequent thing when you have a team like led by Luka Doncic and Kyrie Irving's, but just seeing how capable, like when the situation calls for it, for the complementary players to attack and make a play. That'll be interesting to see. And I think the Spurs are like a pretty underrated test for that. They're not like going to be a dominant defense out of the gate. Obviously, like I don't think that's going to be the way it works. But I think just a team with a lot of length, a lot of size, a lot of athleticism. That's going to be an interesting test. And I think offensively for the Spurs, that on the other side, they have to get used to playing with combinations like that. Like Jeremy Sohan isn't really like a pull-up shooting threat. He's got an interesting game. Seeing how the Mavs kind of handle that, and then play with some of their smaller options on the court. Like during preseason, they struggled at times with like Seth Curry. They like kind of Timberwolves really worked the ball around and punished him on a couple possessions just because he was small and they had multiple big threats on the court. And Kyrie Irving is a smaller guard as well. He's a pretty thin frame guard as well. So just seeing how players match up against those different like size jumbo lineups, I guess you will be important. And then just seeing also how Luka looks in his first game after not playing in the last preseason game and being limited to 5 minutes against Real Madrid. That'll be important. And I think an underrated part of that will just be how he kind of tests out Wembanyama. I felt like last season against like I guess you could say a similar size profile like Bull. I think he really kind of made it a point to body him down low and like get into like short range jump shots and drives. And I think seeing how he tests out Wembanyama, who is a much more fluid athlete than Bull, to be perfectly clear. But like just the height and the length, like that, the crazy.
Luka's not gonna shy away from the challenge.
No,
he's seen and heard all the Wembanyama hype. I'm sure he is ready to take that on, take all that on head on, 1-on-1, and just see how it goes. So, and maybe it won't work for him, but he is gonna find out.
For sure. It's a good test to see how that matchup for like the next, hopefully like 10 years is going to look if they're both healthy and on their teams for the long haul. And I think overall too, just seeing how connective they are as a unit, because, for as much as we talked about like at the start of training camp, how like this will be a great opportunity to get on the same page and add layers to, the offense, get the defensive coverages down. They haven't really had a great training camp like circumstance because they did all that traveling for like 12-day international trip, and they were limited in practice time, throughout, unlike a lot of teams who stayed home. And then, the injuries started to happen where we've really not seen even just like the 3 locked in confirmed starters like Luka, Kyrie, and Grant Williams. They played like a total of 6-7 minutes together.
And that was not like a lot.
Yeah, that was like the first quarter of the first preseason game. And, there's nothing quite like getting on court live reps together. So I think seeing just how I guess you could say the things that need to be ironed out between them and like what works, what doesn't work. They've had practice time together, but it's been very, I would say, limiting compared to what would be if they were healthy all throughout. So just seeing that will be a good measure. It could be a little bit of a situation where you got to be patient with it since they didn't really have that great circumstance. And Luka's just coming back from, being sidelined for, I guess you could say, it's been 2 weeks as of today since or almost 2 weeks because that Real Madrid game was on the 10th. So being limited in action for sure. So it'll be interesting to see how all this comes together. And it's the start of 82 games. And we'll have a lot of stuff all throughout game by game.
It's the start of the marathon. We are back. It's going to be a long season, but it's going to be a fun season. We'll see just how much the Mavs can bounce back from what happened last year. I feel like they will. Now, obviously, that's health permitting. I've put that on every time I've said that, I've put that asterisk on it. But, health permitting, I think they will have a pretty big bounce back season. I think they've added the pieces, to ensure that. And we'll just see how it goes. Like you said, there's been some questions, about Luka's availability. I don't think they've officially confirmed anything, but I have a feeling that when you go to practice today, I think Luka's going to be talking and everything, and I'm pretty sure he's going to say he's playing. I just have a feeling that the next time I talk to you, that's what he's going to be saying.
There's definitely been a ramp up for him. Like when you participate in almost everything on Monday, and then you're talking on Tuesday, and you're that's multiple days of participating in practice. That's definitely a very, very positive upward trajectory towards being activated. So definitely read DallasBasketball.com either way, because we'll definitely have whatever he says when he says it. It'll all be over there for sure.
Yeah, keep up with all that. I mean, we're adding a new element to DallasBasketball.com this year. We really haven't gotten into the NBA betting stuff over the last few years, but we're getting into it now. Our guy Michael Mulford's adding that layer to the site. He's going to have his picks of the day for every single game this season. So be sure to check out that. Be sure to check out Grant's stuff and myself. We're flooding the timeline over there. Every time you go and look, there's going to be something new. So go check it out. Grant has his own YouTube channel as well. Just Grant Afseth. You can go find him where he's breaking down anything Mavs related over there. Give him a subscription and give us a sub too. I mean, we've had a very, very good summer. I mean, we've built a lot of momentum. We've had a lot of great guests over the summer. It was a good off season, and I expect us to have an even better season now that things are getting underway. So
a breakout season.
A breakout season. Yeah, just like we hope, the Mavs will do, because it's always much more fun to cover a team that's winning a lot than what we had to cover at the end of last season.
A lot of losing and 3 a.m. Being stranded in Charlotte going to Motel 6 was a very interesting combination late in the season.
Yeah, Godspeed to you and your traveling this year, that you have a little bit better luck. If you, I don't know if you need to go to Charlotte again, but we'll see. Guys, I appreciate it. Y'all be sure to like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. And like I said, go over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. We appreciate it, y'all. Y'all have a great rest of your day. Have a great week. And we will see y'all Thursday to recap Mavs versus Spurs. We're getting started again. We'll see you next time.